Town Council special meeting. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Leona? Councilor Souza?
Present.
Councilor Perry?
Present.
Councilor Mello?
Present.
Councilor Lambert?
Present.
Councilor Shabbat? Present. Councilors Demidiris and Pelletier are absent. First agenda item is a discussion on the possible action on fees and fines for various departments. Mr. Hosek?
Madam President, just to explain the document in front of you, the far right-hand column is the requested action, and just a little bit of nomenclature. Where the words appear, no change, it really means that we can't change it through this mechanism, not tonight, because it would require rewriting an ordinance, either posting that for public hearing or otherwise changing a longstanding policy of the town. Those words appear most commonly when there's a reference to section 1-7 of the town code, because that is your catch-all background rule for the municipal court to levy a fine. So we won't be, these are here for, I think, general education purposes. You can see what the fines are for various offenses. But where a specific dollar amount is established, it's carried over, and where a change is requested, I think you have color copies. Do you have color copies? Because where there's a change requested, it should be in red. So if we want to go through, first and foremost, those items that are marked in red, on page 2, there's an entire schedule of recommendations coming from the Harbor Commission, which is well represented here tonight, and I'll let them speak to those requested changes. Then I have others for junk vehicles, and then some of our licensing fees, which are tied to uses that are no longer allowed by the Tiverton zoning code, but for which we still issue licenses.
Madam President, I just have one question for Matt. Matt, have we compared these to other towns in our Middletown or Portsmouth, Bristol? Are we compatible?
You know, Councilman Pelletier asks the same question all the time. We try to do that when we arrive at these. I'm going to be honest with you, this schedule this is a lot of work. And where we think we're way off, the individual department heads have identified that. So Mark is here to talk about our planning fees, which are in fact way out of whack with surrounding communities.
Okay.
In other cases, we're driven by trying to reconcile the fees we charge to the services provided. There has to be some sort of, legally, there needs to be a connection between what it costs us to review or to enforce the law with what we charge. And we're comfortable with the numbers as presented as a reflection of that.
I mean, I was just going through these over the weekend, and for a switch, it's 80 cents per switch. I guess if you're building a new house,
Yes.
80 cents per, like, plug, switch, whatever it may be. So somebody like the casino coming in, they're going to have, it's going to be quite expensive.
Sure. And you'll notice in this backup material, at the bottom of the page, there's this sort of catch-all language. That if the work presented is more than $1 million, the fee may be adjusted
Okay.
to reflect the actual costs and the benefits to the town. But it's catch-all language. There is no trigger for that mechanism. I suppose the developer or the applicant must request that change from the council and no one else. And we haven't seen it used yet. I personally think $1 million is too high. When we have, for instance, if we have a small business started in town that has an electrical or mechanical system that is a major part of their operation, and it represents a far greater cost even than the building itself. I'm thinking of a real example. I think you know what I'm talking about. I think it's profoundly unfair to have this very high fee for that one inspection, especially if it's an air handling system. The mechanical inspector has been doing this his whole life, and for the most part will walk in, take one look at it and say, that looks right, and then he'll look at his Section 128 statement from the architect or the engineer who designed that piece of equipment, do a plan review, which he's probably already done, and that's it. And he's going to get 28% of 4%.
Right.
And if the piece of equipment was $1 million, that's a pretty high fee.
Yeah.
So I think we can build more flexibility into this fees and fines arrangement on the building side of things.
Right.
Having said
Okay.
that, these are long-standing, I mean, everybody's paid pretty much the same for
And
many.
they know this up front, right, when they're building it.
So these are posted in the building department. When you come in and request a permit, they're on the left-hand side, right next to the other announcements in the office.
Thank you.
We'll get to it. Why don't we get through the Harbor Commission?
Harper's here. Before they speak, I just, for the record, I support 100% their proposal. I think they've really thought hard on this, and I hope you can agree.
We were given a sheet of paper with a proposal. That proposal was based on old, uncorrect information. So this is a more up-to-date, clear copy of what's going on.
So this one's not good.
Yeah, this one's more up to date. That one didn't reflect the exact amount of moorings.
Okay.
When we did that original proposal, the original proposal was based upon old data that I had as I was the harbor master in 2012. So that was old data from 2012. This is data for moving forward for next year.
Current data.
Current data. This is using, I got together with the harbor master on Saturday, we got current data, we entered the current data into this sheet, and this is what we've got.
So you understand what's going on here. The objective is to try to make the overall fee schedule more equitable between small boats, Boston whaler 13-footer, and large boats, 50-some-odd foot sailboat, for instance. And the variant demand upon services, water space, and water depth that the two types of boats require. Currently, it's a flat line. You charge the Boston whaler the same thing as you charge a 50-foot sailboat or powerboat. Yet the sailboat will require greater depth of water, far greater radius on its swing on its mooring chain and such, as compared with a whaler. So we're trying to say when you're under a certain length, you are charged a much lower fee. The analysis that was done, and all the credit goes to Dave on this, because he took the time to load in the data on what the various boats were that were on the various moorings, and then we developed a fee structure so that it was a zero change to the town in terms of the impact of restructuring the fees to be charged. Now, this will not apply to the 2016-17 year because this coming season, that bill has already gone out. That invoice is already gone out. This would be for the 2017 season.
So what we have is recommended 2015 mooring fees is
That which was attached to your
the document.
handout,
Yeah.
as opposed to that which was given to you by Dave this evening. What Dave gave you this evening is based upon the current mooring count. When we were working on this before, we had a larger number of moorings. We had a number of commercial moorings. So many of them have been, Quality Yachts, for instance, has surrendered a number of commercial moorings. Now, commercial mooring is not a fisherman. It is a mooring that is utilized and used for renting. It's not a commercial fisherman's mooring. And there's also non-resident moorings fall in the same category in terms of pricing. There were a number of moorings up by the Mount Hope Village condos that were surrendered this past year. So unfortunately, that income stream has diminished, and we're working on, we made a proposal in our budget for trying to do a harbor analysis to see if we can replace a lot of that income and also make the harbor more efficient in its layout. We have to go out for some RFPs and whatnot to come back with you in a future time on that issue, but the overall income stream from moorings has unfortunately diminished predominantly because of moorings that weren't really being used anyways, but we're paying a large fee.
If you look at that 2015, the old one that I said was no good, if you look at the total number of moorings, there were 405 on that one. If you look at today's mooring schedule, it's 384. So we're quite a bit down, you know, we've lost some revenue as far as the moorings. Now, those moorings, they were, like Bruce said, they were located at the north end of town, in front of basically the Boathouse restaurant in that area, just north of the Boathouse. Those moorings, it's not easy to just turn around and say, okay, someone else can take that spot. The problem with that is, in order for you to take a mooring location along the waterfront, you either have to have riparian rights, means you have to live on the water, or you have to have access by a dock or a piece of land that you can put a dinghy in. Well, the Boathouse doesn't want a whole bunch of dinghies sitting up on their shoreline in front of, and they don't want you to use their dock to store a whole bunch of dinghies to go out to those moorings. So right now, those places stay vacant, so it's not like we could just reissue those moorings. A lot of the other areas in town, like Fogland, Nanaquacket Pond, they are already beyond our mooring limits for the town. They are beyond, and we're losing moorings through attrition in those locations. So the only area that we can actually place moorings in town is two areas. One is the Tiverton Basin, believe it or not, but right now we can't physically fit them. We're allowed to have more moorings than we have in the town, in the Tiverton Basin, by about, I don't know, about 18 moorings. But we can't fit those 18 moorings in there because there's no physical room, because if you look at the way the moorings are, you look at Portsmouth and every mooring is directly in line and straight. You look at Tiverton, the moorings are like this, they're all scattered all over the place. That's what Bruce was talking about, realigning our harbor. We'd like to get that realigned so we could get those extra moorings in there. The only other location we could put moorings would be in the north end of town, in front of the area near the Boathouse, or even north of there. But again, they have to have access. They have to have either riparian rights, or they have to be willing to launch at maybe Riverside Marine or the boat ramp and drive all the way down there in a north wind blowing, and yeah, it would be pretty messy. So we're not gonna get a lot of takers on those moorings. So again, that's why our mooring is slowly depreciating. Our amount of moorings is slowly depreciating.
I was just gonna ask what you thought.
Oh, you want, what
No,
I
I'm
think?
asking what your thoughts were.
Well, I have a question. So the study is gonna cost how much?
We don't have an RFP at this point. We had put in our budget a proposal of $5,000 as a budget item, and then we'd go out for RFPs and see what people might say. I know your recommendation was not to allow that simply because you didn't know what the return on investment was. It hadn't been explained, I guess, thoroughly enough. But that's our objective, and I have no idea exactly what it would cost. We'd go out an RFP to a number of, you need a surveyor engineer that can do not only the siting of the mooring field, but also somebody who knows how to, design and determine what kind of mooring structures you need, so you can determine how many boats you can fit in given locations.
Would you care to speculate, if you had 18 more moorings in the Tiverton Basin,
I'm gonna do it.
who would be likely pick them up? Because at $300
We
a
have a waiting
mooring,
list.
the study pays for itself in less than a year. You have a waiting list
We have
for?
a waiting list, and the boats that are on the waiting list are usually pretty large vessels, especially for the Tiverton Basin. It's not small vessels. So with this new fee schedule, it could be, as much as maybe in the area of around $100 per mooring. So it'd be about $1,800, I would guess, per year. That would probably be mid-range, could be slightly less, slightly higher. I mean, if they were all commercial moorings or non-resident moorings, they'd be $325 apiece, times 18, that'd be substantial, but they're not gonna be all non-resident.
Bruce, we've had this conversation before, I just want to, it's kind of out of context, but in terms of the strategy for the waterfront, say you have a well-aligned mooring field, you're maxing out the capacity of the basin, what other amenities would we have to have in place to attract the kind of customers who want to rent the moorings and want to use the waterfront?
Well, ideally, the access to the water is critical. Right now, you have very limited access to the water, you have very limited access to places to store dinghies. One of the things that I have in my own personal notes and I want to put on my agenda is the issue of a concept of dinghy racks that are town located and people can rent for a nominal fee. That gets them a place to put their dinghy to get out to their boat. This is done in Bristol, for instance. It started off with some random dinghy racks that they were given candidly by the Bristol Yacht Club, and then those were in turn replaced by some very substantial structures that are there now today. And it must have been successful because I don't think they would have replaced the first go-around with the new structure if it wasn't. It's pretty well occupied. When you read the local newspaper, you don't see stories about dinghies disappearing and being stolen. I'm sure there's some chains to keep honest people honest. But the amenities like that, part of what we're pushing for with regards to the Stonebridge abutment is the improvement of the amenities that are there. There are some pilings that are theoretically there for a dock there to be servicing for the fire and police and the harbor master. A dinghy dock associated with that would be an amenity that would bring visitors to town and allow citizens to be able to get their dinghy in water, get loaded up and get out to their boat. Those are amenities which would improve the utilization of the harbor.
How about parking?
Parking is always an issue. I personally am of the opinion that there's a parking spot that's available, and I know this, I'm going to hit a hot button here, up behind the red dory and such. Someone told me, but then...
I thought you were going to say in front of Coastal Roasters.
No, I wouldn't say in front of Coastal Roasters. That's always already a challenging gauntlet in the morning. But I have an answer for anyone who says that you can't back out into a roadway, and it's called start your parking lot at Main Road. But the issue of parking is always, it's the problem that Tiverton has all over the place. Every town does.
So let me put a final point on the question. Have you received feedback from boaters who wished we had better parking amenities? Because they say, I just can't leave my vehicle for long enough to really enjoy my time on the water.
Well, their issue, it's sort of a chicken or egg issue. If you had moorings and a place to put their dinghy, then parking might become an issue. But when we were discussing the repurposing of the gas station site, the issue of parking has always come up. And it has been the topic of discussion at our commission about where there is parking that is available, but on town-owned land already. And I don't know what's going on. That's sort of way outside our bailiwick, other than the idea that we can say that could be utilized to service the waterfront as well. I think that EDC is the ones that are probably looking more at that than we are, but we certainly would be the beneficiaries of it. The other issue is the boat ramp that's down now underneath the Secana Bridge. That is still a state-owned boat ramp. There is some parking down there. We made some proposals previously when the question was who's going to own that ramp, about how that parking area could be utilized. And we made a specific recommendation about how you finance that. And it's very simple, timed meters. And you put in your money on a credit card or with cash into a meter, you put your slip on your dashboard, and you pay for your parking space if you're going to go out in your boat for the afternoon. This was done down in Westport. One of our members, Chip Lawrence, has done that. He said this is exactly how they do it. And the answer to how you pay for it or how do you police it is you have a substantial penalty if you're over time. Not hard. And then you have monies coming in through the parking fees to pay for trash barrels and other amenities that are badly needed down there.
Yeah, I've been down there. I go down there almost daily during the summer to check on the trash.
Mhm.
So, All right, how do we compare then to Portsmouth, Bristol, and other?
Well, Portsmouth is not charging fees, and bite my tongue for a minute, because it's incredible what they've done. They charge, what, $5 a mooring, but only because they started using a mooring registration program. Why they don't charge for their moorings, I don't know. As compared with Bristol, we are pretty much on the mark. We're a little actually under Bristol. They don't have a scaled system quite like this. They don't go as low as ours does, but they do have a scaled system starting at 30 feet. And non-residents pay double the maximum for their given boat as a resident. I have a mooring over there, and I think I pay $360 for that mooring because I'm now a non-resident. Where a resident would be about $170 or $160.
And as far as other visions for the waterfront, you know, we have the stone bridge if it ever happens. There, we could also put a dock along the north face of the stone bridge. Originally, when the bridge first was turned over to Tiverton, there was a dock on that north side. There was a dock on the north side. If we had a dock on the north side, we could even put slips in there. We could rent slips. We could have transient slips where people can come visit our town. There's a whole bunch of opportunity there.
We just
These
need
18
floats.
moorings that we're short in the basin, we could put them inside the basin as town-owned moorings and charge rent on a weekend basis. So there's a lot of different things that can be done.
Is it true, we just need floats there, right? Aren't the
Yeah.
pilings still there? On the north
Pilings
side?
are still there. How viable they are, I don't know if anyone's
Well,
really
the
investigated.
pilings are there for our dock, the town dock.
For the, yeah.
But for the original dock, there's nothing there.
Nothing there.
No, that's all washed out. It's all gone.
Now, you used to have late fees involved, if they paid late?
We haven't had late fees involved since 2012. There's been no late fees involved.
They pay?
Yeah, when they changed we used to have two. We used to have an early fee payment and a late fee payment, and then the regular fee. So if they all got their payments in early, they got $10 off a mooring, whatever. And then if they were late, they were charged almost double the mooring. That went away in 2011 when they came up with the 55 and 325 structure. So those went away.
Just feel like we charged the people last year.
Whenever that year was, we had really difficult communication in between
When's there'll be
Rob
people
and
coming in
Tyler.
There's
They're coming in
Terschler,
this
when
first- the
Harbor
first
Master
meeting, aren't
Terschler,
they?
there's a loss of
With their new
communication.
plan, the whole plan for the...
Okay.
I didn't see it on the agenda. I didn't see it.
Well, I've got nothing else to ask you. I mean, like I said, I think you've worked very hard on a good plan. Thank you for updating your proposal. It represents about a $9,000 difference from our traditional revenue projection for this line, but I
Well,
think you were at a high point at 55.
We were at a high
That was-
point, and the changing of the fee structure does not change the revenue stream to the town.
No, I noticed that you're neutral.
You were neutral. It just tries to make it more equitable based upon the current mooring utilization, and there's no reason to anticipate it. We're not telling anybody, by the way, you're going to spend another $500 to be here in town.
Right. So the only
That's not
reason it's
happening.
down is you have fewer moorings, and the moorings that have gone away were underutilized or unutilized commercial moorings.
That is correct.
And the efficiency of those businesses took that away.
I just noticed a slight mistake in the light blue in the middle of the piece of paper. It says present fees for 2016, that is correct. Anticipated fees, it should be for 2017, and that's the 46-1. That's if the moorings don't go, if the number of moorings doesn't increase or decrease, that's what's expected.
Any questions from the council?
Yeah, I just have one more, actually two. The $5,000 that you would need for the study, correct? Is that?
That was an approximation.
Approximately,
We don't
okay.
have any real number on that.
If you say that 1,800 will be brought back per year,
Approximately.
so that would be like a 2.5, 3-year payback on that,
That's correct.
which I don't have a problem with. Secondly, have we gone out for any kind of grant money is there anything out there?
There's grant money out there. The only grant money that we've found for the harbor so far is the grant money for the pump-out boat, but we're not gonna move on that, because we know where that ended up last time.
Have we-
But we haven't found any specific to the harbor related to...
Have we talked to any of our reps to see if they can get us any kind of money for,
I have not.
might be a place you want to go. I mean, they come up with these little, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 gifts every once in a while from the state, so.
No, in terms of I heard your comment, Mr. Souza, about DEM grant. DEM wants to put in transient moorings for visitors, and we've identified 3 locations at the north end where the other moorings are gone, and we tried very nicely to try to encourage them that they should offset the lost income that the town would have, and the response was basically, we don't pay the town for us using our bottom of the water,
Right.
because they own the bottom of the water, not us. It was an attempt.
Doesn't surprise me.
It didn't surprise us either, but
The only-
harm in asking.
If I could, Madam President, please. The only thing I'll say, Dave, you talked about the return, but that's, what wasn't mentioned is the cost to move all the moorings that would have to be moved. So there is
Well,
a cost to
fortunately,
align that.
excuse me for a second, Joe, but fortunately, in the town ordinances, it says that the harbor master can tell you to move your mooring at any
Yeah.
time. It's in our ordinances. So once we identify that a mooring is improperly located, we can turn around and tell the owner, upon your next inspection of your mooring, you gotta pull the mooring and relocate it to this new location.
I'm sure it'll be popular with some people.
I'm sure it'll be popular, but it is in our ordinances. We
Yeah.
can do that.
I can
Well,
anticipate.
no, let me just say that I agree with you because I see the Portsmouth field.
It's,
And even like in the Island Park where they've added down there, they've,
Right.
they've brought in. So I see the value of, realigning it and
Absolutely.
it does actually make it easier driving through between too.
It
If you're
does.
not,
In anticipation, to give you a heads up as counselors, you may be getting calls from members of your constituency about our mooring inspection obligations. We're starting to put the screws to people on that. And when that happens, if they want, well, we're trying to tell people you got to do it or you lose your mooring because they're not doing it. And when that event comes, if someone wants to come before your council, be sure to give us a call because I will bring an exhibit that will explain exactly why it's important.
Yeah.
I have it in my
I got
possession. It's
got
very good
notice a couple of
exhibit,
times
something
about
you-
my
You won't believe
chain.
until you see it.
They always got me on my chain
It's a
every
chain
year.
that goes down to nothing.
Yeah.
but we do have ordinances to, take care of your mooring, and if it doesn't, it's now an illegal mooring, and an illegal mooring can be removed.
To Joe's question, then, how much would it cost to?
For someone to
So
pull up a
for-
mooring and
pull up a
lift
mooring
it, it depends on the weight class. 500-pound mooring, probably about $250 to move. A mooring that's a 2,000-pound block, actually the bigger ones are the 4,000-pound blocks. The 4,000-pound block requires special equipment to remove it, and you're probably looking somewhere in the area of $800, $900, maybe $1,000 to move it.
I have no idea about moorings.
Right.
I don't know about,
Well, they're gonna have to, what has to happen with a big 4,000-pound block, even standby at Standish Boatyard, the big crane,
Great, I would,
the big boat,
Right.
he cannot pull a 4,000-pound block out. What he does is he hooks up to it, pulls as tight as he can, and then he goes down in the water and forces air underneath it.
Floats
So he's
it.
gotta go scuba diving underneath it to break it, so it breaks suction, and then pops free. And then he can't haul it to the deck because he doesn't have the rig to haul it to the deck. A guy like Brandon over at Pirate Cove could, with his crane barge, haul a block out and move it directly. So, it depends on the individual that's doing the work, how much they're gonna charge.
well, I just think that the waterfront's an untapped pearl that we have
I agree.
in this town.
I
and
agree.
should do something to start it going anyway. It's-
And,
There's so
this
much
is just the
potential.
first area. I think we should also, down the road, not today, not tomorrow, but down the road, we should think about reorganizing Fogland, straightening out the lines in Fogland,
Yeah.
reorganizing you know, the Nanaquacket Pond, and getting our town back to the way it should be, looking good.
I agree. Takes money.
It takes money.
It takes money. yes.
Obviously, we don't have a lot of that.
Absolutely.
You'll be happy to know that the...
All right, should we do each section, we should take a motion on?
When I go to
There's one other thing on, is
they're
this,
looking
this
for
is
the
not
next-
part of your
one the next
proposal?
meetings to come and present their
Excuse me?
plan. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
One conversation at a time,
Okay.
please. There's the marine toilet and sewage discharge, putting in offense fees on that. Is that also part of this harbor proposal?
No, we have not made any proposal in that regard.
I think there's a state.
There's a state fee, and if you are not, it's my understanding, and I can stand corrected, but if your boat is not set up with a sewage holding tank, and not displaying its sticker, it's my understanding that there's a $1,000 fine for that. It's a serious fine. Not seen DEM anywhere enforcing it. But it's, you know, the Rhode Island was the first state to go completely discharge-free, and to have a good program in that regard. That's one of the program issues we've been advocating in the past 4 years, for a pump-out boat to service this area, because then, you know, it's very difficult to enforce a rule that you don't provide the service that's for. The only truly functioning pump-out site right now is at Standish, in terms of accessibility in Tiverton. If you go online, it'll tell you that the yacht club has one. Yeah, it's tucked up, it was tucked up in their basement prior to the fire. I don't know where it is now, and it's certainly not on their docks. The one over at Pirate Cove is in, well, you can't access it. It's not reasonably accessible. So it's discouraging people from using it.
All right, so these, where it says first offense 25, second offense, third offense, is that valid?
I candidly don't know where those came from.
I candidly don't
I
know
think
the
that was a
answer
copy
either.
and paste mistake, Madam Chair, on my part, since I'm going to have the final edit on this. So just, they're not established by you. It would have to be an ordinance anyway to establish it by you, so we can't do that tonight. Now, here's my one thought, though. Could I ask the Harbor Commission to look into this and come back to the process again? Here's why.
Look into which,
A fine structure for this offense, if it's necessary. Here's why I say that. I spent the morning reading our stormwater report, which is an annual thing, and I'm a little bit discouraged. It doesn't seem like we've really made any effort at stormwater management since about 2011, and the quality of the water, and every step we take to solidify the town's commitment to the quality of the water in the TMDL area and the entire watershed area will probably help us get points. When we talk about DEM grants, this is where the money is, and this is where the energy is environmental compliance. We can tie it into almost everything we want to do down there. But this would be an area, I just asked if you'd look into it and come back when it's convenient.
No, that's not a problem. And in terms of what's, well, we were before, I think most of the council before, when we were talking about our budget, one item in the commission's budget is the continuing of the water testing, because we have identified sources on a general basis, and now we want to continue to get closer to the source. So we have baseline, and we get action on cleaning up the source of contamination that is coming into the various water bodies of Tiverton.
Okay. Any other questions? Do I have a motion
To approve those changes?
to approve the 2017 mooring fees?
I'll make a motion to approve the 2017 mooring fees.
I'll second.
And that's to go out for public hearing. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
No. I was going to second, but Peter did, so.
Okay, so where it says that first offense, second offense, that's not applicable. We'll remove that. And underneath that, it says not relevant for a coming year for a town boat ramp. Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, thank you.
Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So there's no recommended changes, Madam President, until we get to page 4, unless somebody would like to take another one up. At the top of page 4, Chief of Police and I have discussed this one at some great length recently. We have a shared responsibility between the police department and the zoning official when we get complaints about unregistered vehicles or junk vehicles in open-air storage in a location where there is no junkyard license. And the zoning official may cite the storage activity as illegal under the zoning code, but it really ends up being the police department has the authority to cite the owner and to actually physically remove those vehicles. The police chief feels that $15 a day for storage is completely inadequate. It actually makes it a loser for him to do this financially. So we're at the point where it costs him money to enforce the laws of the town, and he feels $50 is a more realistic figure. So my recommendation reflects the police chief's view of the matter.
Any questions from the council?
Where are we storing the cars? Aren't we storing it in that fenced area behind the police station?
When we have room, yes.
So it's towed there, we just put it behind the police station, I mean, so we're not paying an outside vendor.
No, but it's his
storage.
overall cost. He's got to come up with the cash and everything else for the tow. He only gets paid back when somebody claims a vehicle. Sometimes they don't, so then he has to do all of his own junking of that vehicle. It just becomes an administrative situation for him.
You know, at $50 a day, I think, you know, if it's just a car that was broke down and somebody just was, you know, trying to sell,
But we won't tow those, Councilman. We don't do that.
if it's
You know,
unregistered.
that's not our practice. We don't just walk up to the door, bang on the door, and give the
I know
homeowner a
that.
ticket. We'd never do that. The observation is made that the car's been there for a very long time. It's in very poor condition. There's been no change whatsoever, grass, weeds, et cetera, growing up through the windows. That's when. And then it's, hey, you got 30 days. Can you move this vehicle? Can you move it along? And it's only after that that we start to get a little bit more testy about it. And we have a couple of situations. Neil brought it up the other night. I won't get into the address or identity of the parties, but there are 6 or 7 vehicles stored outside, a couple of RVs, more boats than are allowed, and about 400 or 500 unregistered vehicles. And it's just, you know, it was in the context of that discussion about that specific case that the chief made this recommendation. I wasn't going to, given his personal situation, I wasn't going to drag him here tonight for this one thing, but,
Does he have any numbers on this, Matt? Like,
well, I
10 a year?
pretending to be Tom for a second, I think he would say, I would have more numbers if it was more economical or made more sense for me to do this.
Oh, right,
I would do it more.
okay.
Yeah. I'll tell you, just to give you a sense, since January 1st, to the best of my recollection, we've had 4 or 5 significant complaints about issues where we felt we wanted to engage in this policy.
And that's the only time we react to it, right, is when there's a complaint. I mean, we don't go looking for this.
Oh, no, we can't be the junkyard police, or
Right.
junk car police. It's usually in connection with other problems on the site.
Right, okay.
Any other questions from the council?
I just have a comment that I'm not willing to vote for $50 a day. I mean, I just have to vote against it, I guess.
That's what they charge in other towns.
Well,
I know that. That's
At least $50. Yeah.
that's
But you're
$50.
giving them so much notice.
Yeah, you're
If
giving
the
them notice.
$50 was that onerous, they'd move it themselves and
Right.
move it down the road to someone else's property.
And if it is towed, they hurry up and come get it. That's the
That's right.
point.
They could do the right thing.
Right.
All right, do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion to increase removal to $50, reasonable cost of removal plus $50 storage fee per day.
Do I have a second? All those in favor? All those,
Forward to the public hearing, right?
to forward to
All
public
public
hearing?
hearing, right.
I'm opposed.
Opposed? 1. Earth removal.
So these two, as it appears in front of you here, in Chapter 38, this is earth removal really without a license. So this is unpermitted activity with no oversight. My personal view is, it's kind of hard right now. We're between a rock and a hard place, not to use a bad pun. We're not issuing any licenses, so how can we punish somebody for not having a license? It's kind of a chicken and egg problem. We're going to the state to ask for the addition of the necessary authority to add granite to the list of activities that may be regulated through a town license. And the view is, it's especially important to have this license and to have a substantial fee associated with it, along with a closure bond, if you will, because the use is prohibited by the Tiverton zoning code. It is allowed to continue, but if you've made the policy decision as a community to prohibit the activity, but then you don't govern it through any sort of adequate licensing regime, you created a very strange situation where we're going to allow 2 or 3 to continue because they're pre-existing non-conforming, but it's the wild, wild west as to what they do. So the legislation has been brought up to the State House. I don't know that the Tiverton Town Council can really take meaningful action on licenses. I just flag it for you until you have the authority to, when there's no need for it to be here, really, until, we're not enforcing anything until we have the authority to go forward.
Can I ask?
They don't even know.
Can I ask one question?
Yep.
Tony, do we know what kind of legislation's going on at the state?
There's been some transmission problems. I'm actually there's been some transmission problems, and I'm going to the State House tomorrow to check on the status of the legislation, where it is and where it's going, so. I don't think that you're going to be able to act on this particular proposal within the next couple of months. So I do think it's something that has to be held out, and I've got to find out exactly what's going on with the legislation.
It just so happened this weekend, I had 3 people, I was trying to clean my yard up, and 3 people came by and stopped, and all complaining about the quarries. One gentleman from Sherrill Drive actually said he was sitting at his kitchen table, and did they blast on Thursday?
I think they just started. I think that was their first blast of the season.
And he said he just saw a crack go right across the ceiling.
Okay, thanks for the info. Let's move on to flea market license.
All right, so there's 4 on this page, Madam President, and I know not everybody enjoys this exercise, but here's food for thought. I would just like to have a conversation. I would like to understand what is the consensus of the Tiverton Town Council so it can guide my activities as well as Neil's and other people who work in your administration. The first is with respect to the flea market and the recommendation that the license go from $350 to $500. There's only one in town that appears on a regular basis for the license, and this would just simply be an update. It has been quite some time since it has been updated. I think we enjoy a cordial working discussion with the ownership. I think these are folks who've done business in town for a long time. They deserve to be treated with respect, but the building is starting to look pretty rough. We had a fire there that got put out a couple of years back, and now we've got tarps covering the roofs, and we've discovered a number of building and fire code violations. Like I said, it's been cordial when we ask for or we notice things are going inappropriately. Corrective action tends to be taken right away. But I think we need to start to pay attention to the fact that this activity set may not be generating enough income even to support its own building. And, you might want to take some very soft, gentle steps towards suggesting, something different.
Well, that was going to be my question. Considering the condition of the property out there, it's hard to believe that they're making $500 a year. And I have no idea at all. I haven't seen their tax returns or anything. But you're right, buildings are actually falling down at this point. So what we're asking them is to pay another $150. I'd like to see them spend $150 to try to fix up the place.
Correct.
But really.
That's what I was gonna ask. How does raising the fee help them put
Yeah.
more money into the building? I mean, it's a flea market, and it's not like it costs the town all kinds of money to write a piece of paper out, and $350 to me seems excessive.
No, it's
And I know
more,
we need
it's
the revenue, so
it's the inspection activity associated to actually granting them the license. So really, if you think about it, if the condition precedent were code compliance, and we would not issue a license unless there was code compliance, then this license frankly would not issue.
I thought,
Well, that might lead to another question. What are their long-term plans? I mean, are they really interested in staying there? If you look at the property, it looks like they stopped making any effort at all years ago.
I don't know, I just put my economic development hat in from, the parking lot's great. It's a fantastic location. It has significant
that's what I
value.
mean.
This is a choice that they've made to continue to do what they've done for many years. So, like I say, trying to be subtle, but we've had the conversation. If you're going to leave it at 350, then it's fine. There's no need to kick it around. But I think everybody understands that this is a, we talk a lot about the character of the town. I think you have to start to think about how does your licensing policy and the fees you charge for licenses reflect the values you believe you're trying to preserve, preserving the appearance of the town.
But if they're coming for a license, then they should be meeting all legal requirements. If they have an outstanding NOV, then we shouldn't be issuing a license. So
Well,
if
should we-
there are fire code violations, then we can't issue a license. So I don't think it matters how much the license is. If you raise it, it's not going to, the result will not change.
Yeah,
So-
we haven't come to you with show cause, because like I say, when things are noticed, they get fixed.
Matt, is that 350 per vendor or for the whole?
For the whole,
That's for the
It's
whole
the owner.
building?
For the owner, yeah.
because they rent stalls or
And then they
sections.
then they lease it out, I guess.
it's just a weekend rent.
Well,
You can
So,
feel
I've been
free
in
to
this
move
town
on.
for 41 years, and I haven't seen an improvement in that flea market
No.
in 41 years.
Yeah, they do some work down there.
They fixed it up.
If you, if
all
Mrs.
right,
Mrs.
all right,
Black
let's
is a
move on
loyal
to the next
customer.
one.
I'll have to start going.
I go there quite often.
Yeah.
Once in a while, you find a jewel down there, you know, not more often, but.
All right, all I wanted to have was the conversation. It was important for us to know what people think of it. The next one is,
Leave the other
I think
I
we're
recommend 150.
a little bit more serious about this one. Junkyard license fees. We, just so we understand what we really should be doing, we should be doing annual meets and bounds with GPS locators and making sure that none of these yards are expanding. So your licensing ordinance doesn't say expanding beyond the lot it's on. Your ordinance says expanding to any space, even on its own lot, greater than it had previously occupied. So there would be some significant cost and additional time invested by the building and zoning official, in this case wearing his zoning official hat, to enforce those licenses, even those few licenses that we have, using modern technology and modern analysis. 1,500 is almost, sounds like a draconian number, but, you know, we come back once again to the character of the town's fragile environmental resources, and the location of many of your junkyards. You know, either bordering or immediately in the neighborhood of wetlands that form the headwaters of bigger bodies of water. So, at the risk of sounding like, you know, Greenpeace or anything, I think this is a necessary step towards sending a message that this is not a use favored by the town. It was banned through the operation of the zoning code, and now, just to enforce the rules we have, is a substantial investment of time and energy.
Madam President.
Any comments?
Well, my concern would be, I really don't want to send out a message to a legal business that we don't like you. In truth, personally, we may not like them, but I don't know if we want to send that message out of the town. And for that reason, I would I would go along with a recommendation for an increase, but not $1,500. I mean, that is draconian. And again, I don't know the financing of those, what the financing situation is for those companies. Whether or not that's really a stretch for them, coming up with another $1,500. Again, I prefer that they use it on the property. I would go along with a recommendation. It would seem to me that you could do this over a period of years. Maybe with the problems that we're having with these junkyards, I think you could make a reasonable argument that $500 is not really sending out the message. What we want is compliance.
How many junkyards do we have? There's like half dozen?
Yeah, just about.
Can I please?
Joe?
Well, I don't know, you made some, first thing, you start talking about Tiverton's image. If you know, Tiverton, I mean.
I know Site Ready is the gateway to the town at the moment.
Well, it's not just site ready, but Tiverton, I mean, junkyards in this town, and we used to have pig farms and everything else in this town, so I mean, we've come a long way. There were a lot of pig farms in this town years back, and there's a lot of stinky places, and a lot of pollution. We've come a long way, but $1,500 from $200, that's, fair and equal treatment under the law. You know what I mean? We have inspections to do every building, but I don't know, I don't even know where you come up with that. And as far as these businesses being pre-existing non-conforming uses and not wanted by the town, I say that's a bunch of bull. I think the majority of the people don't even know that those businesses are it's only the few select that are actually able to manipulate our zoning ordinance and make businesses pre-existing non-conforming. So I don't think the majority of the people in this town care whether they come to the end of Fish Road and see a business there called Tiverton Auto Parts. I don't think it bothers the majority of the people in this town. I don't know. No way I could ever vote to make a $1,500 licensing fee from $200. They provide jobs in this town as well, but if you go out some of these junkyards, like Arnold's out there, I mean, that guy's, he's making a living, but he's not killing it, To throw another $1,300 a year on his back, yeah, that'll close his door. With the other stuff that's coming down, because he has to do his own water quality testing through DEM and everything else, so. I don't know, and junk is down. So these yards are, already struggling because the price of scrap has dropped. I don't know, I'm not gonna treat a business like that, so I won't be voting for this.
Dave?
I'd make a recommendation to increase it to $500 the first year, and not to
Because we
$1,500.
legitimately do have inspection expenses.
Yeah, we do have
So this
expenses.
is a legitimate expense.
I mean, look what we're going through with.
$1,500, I don't want to send that message, and I would agree with Joe on that. But let's at least meet the cost for the town, which is the inspections.
But we're creating all of that through our ridiculous ordinance. Why don't we
No,
change the ordinance
no,
and let them have a special use permit where they can expand if they need to, so they can survive?
Yeah, but they're expanding into wetlands and other areas. so
Look, when you say to somebody, you can't do it, I don't know, I mean, we don't even want you in our, that's what we're telling you, we're pre-existing, we don't even want you in our town. These are businesses that were here before zoning, a lot of them.
I don't agree with that. I think we're trying to tell them that you have to live within our rules and regulations.
Talking about, there was one junkyard that's had that, the rest of them, I'm not hearing anything about.
And I don't think we've bothered the other ones.
But we definitely been looking from space down on their properties to see if they've even moved a car.
Expanded.
Hey, Big Brother's
So,
watching you too,
yeah.
so.
Now,
We know about it.
is there surrounding towns that have a junkyard license fee, and what would that fee be in comparison?
How much is Westport?
Yeah, I wonder. If we need to, if that's what you want to be competitive with neighboring towns, then we'll do the additional research. But moving on to a public hearing so that we can continue to keep the record open.
Well, I made a motion to increase it to 500. We have a second.
Do we have a second?
No, second.
All those in favor? Opposed?
So this is still going to be open for discussion, right?
It's
No.
going to go, well,
No.
For the
no,
public
it won't.
hearing. So it's gonna stay at 200?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other
So I could-
motion?
You can make another motion.
I would like to reconsider my vote. Could I make?
Well,
You're on the prevailing side.
you want to prevail on the side, you can, yeah.
Okay. So I would make a motion, so I can just reconsider my vote, then, right? How do I do that?
Make a motion to
Make
reconsider.
a motion to.
I'll make a motion to reconsider my vote.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of reconsideration?
I'm opposed.
Opposed?
It still goes to the
Public.
public meeting, and it,
Right.
3-2.
3-2.
It now becomes
reconsider
a
the
public
vote.
motion. That's what I want.
it still has to go to the public, then it can change that.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
you know, when you look at the amount involved, we're charging a business $10 a week to do business in the town.
Along
I
with the
don't think
property taxes that they're
Well,
paying.
that's not, it's not prohibitive.
I still would like to see what neighboring towns are
Yeah, and
charging for
I think we
junkyard
can-
I
use.
agree.
I think we can still-
Because I don't-
1,400 is a lot, too.
I'd also like to see what they're paying for property. What do these junkyards pay for property taxes?
The same as everyone else, I am assuming, right?
Yeah, so I mean, it's not like they're getting a free ride. They don't put kids into schools. They don't take away a lot of services. It's not like the fire department's there every day,
Neither do I.
like some of the other.
All right, moving on to,
Can we make that motion to, do we have to have another motion for
Yes,
the?
yeah, technically you do.
We do, all right, so
he-
I'll
he
try it again.
reconsidered it.
okay.
He reconsidered it, so I'll make a motion
Do
to
we have a
increase
motion?
it to 500.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
Second.
All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. Just gets it open.
Okay, on to victualling license, changing it from 50 to 25, and changing the late fee, filing fee from 25 to 50, just flipping it around.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it doesn't make any sense to me to charge somebody the full boat, and then if they're late doing what they're supposed to do, you charge them half. And then, we often talk about small businesses and the fees they face. Why wouldn't it be a more or less nominal fee? If all their paperwork is in order, it's almost no work for us at all.
Right.
But if we have to chase the guys who are late, that's where the work comes in. And now that we have a full-time fire marshal working with the building official to get us caught up on inspections that haven't been done for years, this is going to be much more ministerial or routine, if you will. It just seems odd to me that we charge a higher fee to be on time than we do to be late.
Okay. I'll make a motion to change the auxiliary license into $25 and a late fee filing to $50. Well, we need them separate. Do we need them
No, you
separate?
can do it
You
together.
do together,
We'll do it
I'll
and-
second.
And you're to place it
To replace it with
for a
the,
public hearing.
to a public hearing, yes.
I have a motion, I have a second. All those in favor? I do have a question on the holiday license.
Which one's that?
It's on the next page.
Okay.
Why do we have a holiday license?
Okay, I agree with you 100%, and I'm so glad you brought it up. It is absolutely, in this day and age, ridiculous. You know, I think this came out of the blue laws in a
Right.
time when Sunday, you were never open on Sundays, you just weren't, or holidays, and you needed special permission to do so. Now, that's common, and really all we're doing here is charging people to be open in the normal course of business. My only concern is, just so that somebody has brought it up, it generates revenue for the town. And almost every business has one, so you'd be leaving that revenue out of the budget. Let me be perfectly honest with you. If you want to have a friendly business atmosphere, take this down to zero or some very, very small amount. But zero is easier to administer than $5, so if you killed it, it would be a nice day.
I'll make a motion to remove holiday license.
Okay, I'll second it.
I have a motion and second. All those in favor? Very good. And that's to go to public hearing.
Correct.
All right, next item on the agenda is collection and disposal fees.
All right, so there are 4 recommendations here, and each one is an increase, a modest increase. I think if the director of DPW were here, he'd be telling all of you that we're still not going to recoup actual costs. We do have to go up. we no longer really have a lot of capacity for managing all of this. We're going to have to move our recycling center, and we should just start generating more revenue from this activity. The danger of raising these fees to the actual total cost capture is that then people will start to dump the stuff in the woods. It'll get so expensive, they won't do it. So I've just got a couple of $5 increases here to just try to make a little bit more, but not so much that we encourage bad behavior.
That's exactly what I keep telling Steve Bellucci. Every time he tells me, we're losing money on these items. That's my answer to him. They'd be dumping them on Crandall Road.
Well, yeah, it seems like Sepauwett Ave is a popular place to get rid of a TV these days.
See how it,
In your neighborhood?
Yeah, because I drive by them.
okay, so,
I noticed you went up $10 on these sofas, couches, and chairs.
Yeah, and that's because that's a much more difficult item to manage. You got multiple materials, wood, springs, various foams, and, you know, that's the one that the central landfill, along with mattresses, that's the one they're really hammering us on.
most places now, if you buy a mattress, they'll take your old one
Yeah.
back anyway, so.
Right.
And they'll charge you, basically.
Yeah, oh yeah, of course they are.
As long as you don't remove the tag, Councilman.
Oh, that's
Don't
right,
remove the tag. It's illegal to remove the tag.
Looking at,
And leave your wife in the bed, so she goes with.
I'm just wondering how many people realize that you could actually take your refrigerator or stoves to the junkyard, just, wouldn't get any money for it, but you wouldn't have to pay $30. In Newport, they have that, not sure what they call it, but they have 5 or 6 guys that Waste Management calls. They'll get a call, come pick up a stove off the curb, and they don't send the waste truck. They call one of the junkers in the area, and he picks it up. For, you know, I guess waste is saving money doing that. That, I don't know, I'm just something I was thinking out, because I think we could have better communication, maybe through our recycling committee. $30 to get rid of a refrigerator just seems, are they taking the Freon out of them, or why is it a $30? Is it just,
Yeah, because it's a pain in our neck to deal with all of this stuff.
but basically we're just throwing it in a metal bin and scrapping it?
Right, but scrap metal is down, so.
I know, no, I'm not saying,
People are
I mean, we're not charging to remove the Freon.
No, I don't think any of our guys are licensed to do that.
Yeah, so,
So for example, Joe, I have an apartment in Somerset, I had a dishwasher, $45 it cost me,
To get it up.
and you could have dumped it right over there.
on Crandall Road, right?
Well, no.
No.
But I'm just telling you, that's how much they cost.
I keep saying, I'm going to say Arrow Auto Parts, that's how far I'm going back, because it used to be,
Salvage.
but, no, right on Booger Marsh, just up Fish Road there.
Just,
Okay, so I'll make a motion to, can we do them all together again?
Yes.
One other,
Mattress.
wait a minute,
Okay.
one other question. What about e-waste? We had talked about maybe coming up with some sort of a, to wait to get rid of those, the computers and things like that.
I'm afraid we're going to need a comprehensive solution to that problem.
That's done once a year, correct? When they pick up the paint and all that other stuff?
No,
No, that's not Eco
They used to
Depot.
just drop it off.
E-waste, you should just drop it off. Now our the statewide
Oh, that's
vendor
right,
is
they
out
stopped
of
that,
the
yes,
business.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we're dropping stuff at Little Compton at the moment.
Right, yep, yep, that's right.
You know, well, there was just something we had talked about, because just what you were talking about, people, you know, dropping them on the side of the road, that we should probably,
No, it's actually worse than that, if you talk to Steve Bellucci. Think about it. I'm gonna hide my refrigerator and I'm gonna sneak it somewhere. And how would I even get it into the car to start off with? But with a computer, you can do an awful lot to get rid of with a computer. Just put it in a, what's the color of the bags now?
The big
Brown paper
purple.
bag.
Put it in
red
a
bag,
bag, you know,
yeah.
a bag, and it's disappeared.
The big red bags.
That, I think that's what Steve is afraid of.
so in other words, they'd be dumping it in the landfill. Well, I don't know, I didn't know if we want to try to put
The
a,
camera's not on, and I'm sure Steve wouldn't want to make this public knowledge.
I just didn't know if we want
Cameras
to put a
on.
number on that too, before we,
Well, now
if
they
this
know
is
how to
going to
get
go
rid
to
of the
public
computer,
hearing, that we
thought
actually,
about it.
maybe just put a number on it, and if we decide not to go with it, at least we have a number on it.
That's a good strategy.
But can we
Because we can just
accept,
have a conversation about it. That's a good strategy.
we can accept them at the landfill, and then what would we do with them?
Well, that's the thing, right now, we're not, because we
Yeah, that's
have
what I'm
nothing to do
saying.
with them.
What do we do with them?
We'd collect the fee, and then it would go up with the rest of the stuff.
Something for Little Compton.
I mean, the state, they're still disposing of them, aren't they, in Johnston? It still would go to Johnston, wouldn't it?
I think that's where some of the vendors are bringing the stuff. They maybe bring it to other locations. The other thing we could have a conversation about, though, at a public hearing is, should there be an enhanced fine for dumping electronic waste on the streetways of the
Now,
town?
that I would agree with. Any dumping, we should really whack people for throwing trash on the roads,
But especially that one, because it has all sorts of hazardous components in it.
plus some public service.
Okay, so do we have to put that on?
We'll have our trash.
You put it on for a public hearing would be my recommendation through the president. That would certainly
Would
suffice.
it fall into this category?
I think it's going to be a fees and fines category, because litter, I'd have to go back, I didn't change any of the litter fines. But we could break it out and make it a separate category of litter, a specific observation.
Okay.
We definitely need to deal with it, making sure that it's available for people to dispose of, so.
Litter is on page 4.
We're going a little
It's on
Compton.
page 4.
Litter is on page 4, halfway down the page. First offense, not less than 30, no more than 300. Subsequent offenses, not less than 100, no more than 500.
And the state, though, isn't there the state law where they not only get fined, but they have to now pick up trash on
Yeah,
the side of the road?
community service.
Community
I think
service.
that's what needs to be added to this, too.
I
State
agree.
law-
Microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, state laws,
The state law now, if you get caught littering, not only do you pay your fine, but you're on a chain gang.
Well, you should have to pick up
You have to pick
trash.
up trash on the side of the road, too.
Should be,
so we could put that in there when we get to it?
So, right, so if you want to put that in the form of motion, if I may, Madam President, make a suggestion, it would be to increase the fee, the litter fine for e-waste and add community service
gotta go out and pick up
for,
4 bags of trash.
as a form of restitution to the town.
And what would that number be?
We'll have to open for discussion.
Well, you're going to make it hurt, because we're only going to catch so many people, and you want the word, that's how it's going to work. First offense, $100.
That sounds good to me.
Subsequent offenses,
$250.
And make that in form of a motion?
and how much for community service? 1 day, 2 days,
Gotta pick
4
up 4
hours.
bags of trash.
4 hours?
4 hours.
No, make it how much trash they gotta pick up. Fill up 4 Tiverton trash bags. I don't know.
$100 worth of trash.
I don't know. I'm just thinking.
Well, actually,
Why
when
we
you put,
look at
if
the
you do
state
put
law?
hours, that they could just hang around for 4 hours doing, it might be reasonable to have 1 bag or 2 bags
Yeah.
of trash. 2 bags of trash,
That way, they don't show up at the church and
Right.
say, oh, I'll clean
2
up.
bags.
We have a trash committee, we should get them involved.
It's gotta be something related.
Or leave it at the discretion of the court and just say.
Yeah, there you go. Let
Community
the
service.
judge decide.
Well, we should look at the state law then.
Yeah.
Okay. This will go to public hearing, we'll,
I know they do
we'll fill
give
in the state
community
law
service for
requirements.
it.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Wow, you agree on something.
Now, that was just for e-waste.
Right. Go back to the mattresses and
We'll go back to the
mattresses,
to the
box
mattresses
springs.
and box springs. White goods,
White
tires.
goods, tires without rims, stuffed sofas, couches, and chairs, to increase them by the 20, 30, 10, and 25.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Okay.
Again, full public hearing.
Yep. Next.
Now, this, just question, this blue and green bins, $5, that's just $5 to buy a blue bin? Are there green bins anymore?
I don't think so. I think you just got the small blue bins, which you still have to buy, because we haven't rolled out the larger bins as a mandatory program. That's a pilot program at present.
All right, so can we just change that to just the
Just
blue bins and eliminate the
Green bin.
green bins?
I'll make a motion to eliminate green bin.
Is there, what page are you on?
Page 6,
Was there a cost for these bins?
$5.
No, I mean, do we know how much it costs the town?
It's a partial reimbursement from RIRI.
The only reason I'm bringing it up is because, I gave up on the bins, but when I was going down, I had to buy like 6 a year because they kept breaking them. I mean, I'd buy a brand-new bin, and within a month, it was all smashed. It was the guys. I had thrown them on the road.
So what you want to do
Buy
is
that new one.
go get a calendar and circle June 30th, 2017, a lot with your pen. Circle that date. Because that's the date that the Patriot Waste contract expires.
June 17th?
June 30th,
I guess I'm not the only one, 'cause I heard from a lot of
2017.
people.
2017.
I'm just wondering if it's costing us money to give these bins out, and then
You betcha.
they're getting smashed up and we're replacing them.
I use duct tape on mine to keep it
only
together.
lasts so long.
I know, but I replaced the
When you
duct
put
tape.
40 beer bottles in there, it kind of, so it's,
Gotta get one of those big ones.
Right, Joe, for
Get the big
27.
one. Get the big sucker.
I'm gonna get it. I've been using a trash can now. I gave up on the bins. I just-
Do I have a second on removing green bins?
Second.
All those in favor?
I'll tell you what, he charged me more than $5 for a bin.
Eh? For the new ones or for the old one?
About 6 months ago, I brought one, and it was like 15.
Well, if he hasn't updated this, I'll check
I
on
don't know,
it.
maybe because it was me.
And on the next,
So you come?
and on the
They
next,
gotta be. I thought they were, the tall blue ones are 15.
I think so, too.
Because I bought one for me and one for my neighbor.
But you're not gonna change
I
it,
think
so
it's
if it's,
fine.
He got me for $30.
Got you for 30?
He got me for $30.
all right, well, this seems to be an issue that requires additional
Well,
investigation.
that'll be good for when we go to the,
It should be split 50/50. I mean, Rhode Island Resource Recovery Corporation, that's how we did it. And then the rest came from a recycling fund that we got a check at the end of the year from
I
the
bet you the
land.
little green one was $5. But not the blue one.
The town administrator will research the
Yeah.
charge of
Probably should be
the,
a limit.
Either that or you're gonna reimburse me.
just a question, at the top of page 7, we have household, non-commercial wood construction and demolition debris, non-pressure treated, and the boxes are blank. Is that correct?
They are blank. Must have been sent to me that way. I'll ask. If we could, just to keep the issue alive then, move it on to public hearing, and let's assign I guess the problem here is that this description doesn't assign a quantity or any other way to measure what the fee is associated with.
And do we allow wood construction, demolition, debris
Yes, we do.
in the landfill? We don't allow commercial.
We don't allow commercial. I believe we allow household, and it may be chipped or ground and used as a component in fill material. That's what they use it in Johnston.
It's like furniture, a lot of furniture.
So I'm guessing there's no fee here because we don't charge anything for it. We use the material.
And if you tear a house down, it's full of shingles and stuff, and show up with dump trailers, he's not gonna let you dump. It's like you went to the dump and you got a couple of 2x4s
Yeah,
along with your regular trash and your brush or whatever, you know, and he's not allowing like a 1-ton to go in there and dump or something.
correct. Not to play Trivial Pursuit, but did you know that the people of the state of Rhode Island paid a royalty fee for a patent at the central landfill? Because they would take construction debris, grind it up, put it on the pile as cover material, put water on it.
Yeah, it started stinking, that's why they had to stop.
But it's a royalty. That was a patented technology, and the people of the state paid.
Why am I not surprised?
Just a little trivia. I don't have anything else,
Bet they
Madam
got a
President,
kickback.
except a note on the,
So on that, you're just going to research, but there's probably
I think there's no charge.
No charge. If there is no charge, just indicate
I'll put 0. No
0.
charge. My only other notation is on the quarry license, that would be page 8, halfway down the page.
Yeah, 250?
It's $250 right now for a quarry license. This will change after any legislation is dealt with at the state level. We currently do not have anyone in town with a quarry license. Mr. Coelho allowed his to expire and did not renew it.
He did not renew
He
it?
did not renew it.
No.
Brayton Ave, Brayton Road.
Coelho's on Crandall,
Crandall.
Crandall, on Crandall.
I thought that was,
all the way down.
I thought Ray Johnson's quarry, I thought that's the one that,
That's Brayton.
yeah. They didn't have a license at that, on that one?
Well, you're right, but it was about 3 or 4 years ago, Councilman,
Yeah.
and he let it expire and he
Let that
hasn't.
expire too.
Now, on page 10, you have fire department mileage.
I think that's just a typo. That's an accident. That would be what I think this has already been done. So it was read at one time because it was going to go up. Oh, I'm sorry. I know exactly why that's there. The list that you approved, you, the council, approved the other night had all of these other items, but not this one. But it was in the chief's request. So that's why it's there. $15 up from the 11.
So it's good that I questioned it.
Yes.
Okay. So fire department wants to increase mileage from $11 per mile to $15 per mile.
It's all coming back to me now, Madam President.
Do I have a motion?
Is that for the run? Is that the run?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make that a motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor? Now, I do have another question, if I can find it. Of course, now I can't.
Do you remember the topic?
Cemetery.
Oh, the plot fee? At
Yeah.
$500?
Yeah, page 10. $500. Now, the cemetery commission also has superintendent fees that they change from time to time, and that's not documented here.
Right.
I just like a complete set of fees in the schedule, because we do approve those fees.
You do, and they were dealt with separately recently. Was it last year when Mr. Christo came in and Mrs. Turcott?
I believe so, and they raised the...
They went up,
They went up.
but they'll be incorporated into this document.
Okay, so if you could include those, I'd appreciate it. Anybody else have any items for this fee schedule, fines and fees?
I just have a question. On the last 3 pages, those fees are just going to stay the same? Is that what that is?
Yeah, those are FYI for you. There's an entire rate structure there. I believe those numbers, when they came up with this scheme, if you want to call it that, or a system, those numbers are interrelated. In other words, if you go up on one, you would make it the same adjustment to the others in accordance with what. But I don't get any complaints except for the extraordinary ones on the real high end. And this is the system we've been administering for years, apparently. I don't believe they're terribly out of keeping with other communities, just eyeballing all of the electrical and mechanical fees. The other thing is these, more than anything, these have to tie back to the actual cost of the inspection. There's been substantial litigation all around the state of Rhode Island. One attorney in particular keeps a close eye on this and has not been a problem for Tiverton, so
May I?
go ahead.
Having been involved in the case referenced, I can tell you that there were 3 communities that ended up paying money to the Rhode Island Builders Association for this. The idea behind the case was your fees have to match what the town does, particularly in the building field. And if there's not a nexus between that, the town is at risk for a loss. And you're correct, Tiverton was not part of that case. Tiverton was an original defendant in the case, was dismissed out as the case marched on. It came down to 3 communities that ended up having to pay because there was no real correlation between what they were charging and what it cost them to do the inspections and everything else, so you do have to be careful with that stuff.
Madam President, if I could.
Go ahead.
All right, I'm on page 10, starting with, in the police department, animal boarding. So that's $15 per day?
Yes.
And we're paying what over there for lease for those kennels? That seems kind of cheap.
26? Does that rings a bell for you?
Yeah. These are where I would see that we should probably try to do a little bit of increasing, and it's in the handicap parking violation. You know, blocking a hydrant, not moving your car during the snow emergencies. I mean, I noticed there was nothing, these, to me, I mean, these seem kind of low from what I've seen in other communities.
I'm not going to disagree with you, Councilman, but I'm going to say that I defer to the chief. And I asked him if he wanted any changes, and he said no.
Yeah, well, I
The
understand.
one that you mentioned, I just would like to, because I drove around the last couple of snowstorms we had, and you realize that parking ban often in Tiverton only applies to one side of the street. So there was confusion even the night in the middle of the storm, and you could see the plows had to swerve around cars.
In residential
But
streets.
No, residential streets, mostly in North Tiverton. Nobody was going to get a citation because they were in fact parked legally, even during the parking ban, because they were parked on the opposite side of the street from the hydrant. The parking ban only extends to the part of the street where the hydrant is during a snowstorm. So enforcement, could get very difficult.
Well, my only point being is if we were going to look at, trying to bring in more revenue, I would think that we want to put it on where we're causing burden when a police officer has to respond because somebody's parked in a handicapped parking space. I mean, that should be at least a $125 fine.
I'm not going to
I
disagree
mean,
with
it's
you.
like $250 in some communities. So,
So make a motion to increase all of them for,
well, what the other council members want to weigh in on it?
well, I
As far
think
as
if you
what-
make the motion, at least we can discuss it at the open session.
Well, you got any idea what you'd like to see for numbers on
Well,
these?
you can increase it by $5 for now, and then increase
Yeah.
it to whatever you want later on.
All right, well, then I'll make a motion for animal boarding, blocking a hydrant, emergency snow removal parking ban, handicap parking place, and return check charge.
I agree with that one.
Yeah, that's a good.
Second?
second that.
Increasing them all by $5?
Yeah, we'll say $5 for now.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
We can increase that later on, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it was just to get it in the public hearing.
Yeah,
That's what I said.
because the animal boarding is
Agreed.
probably more than $20 a day.
It's 26. I didn't make that up. No.
Man, I have just one question, Madam President, on
Yep.
details. Didn't we do something in the contract where we increased it?
Yes, we did.
Is this going to affect that?
In our schedule there, that's just the administrative fee tacked on to the underlying charge, correct?
I believe
Yeah.
so.
Right. So our underlying charge, we negotiate in the contract, or is set by our contract,
Right,
and then we collect a percentage of that.
25%. Okay, so
It's more money for the
no
town.
money comes out.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
The only other thing I had was, we heard testimony from the planning board talking about maybe raising fees in certain areas, dealing with planning. Is there anything in the works on that that we
It's a wonderful segue.
Okay.
We're discussing this tomorrow night.
Oh, my only point is if you're seriously talking about hiring another secretary, that it should be the developers that are paying the fee, since they'll be the one that, primarily, using.
I don't want to make the meeting any longer than it already is, but Susan's put a lot of work into this already. Impact fees, correct? How do we compare to any other, just even one other community?
Well, I started working on tomorrow night, it's on our agenda. So I looked at basically, well, 4 of us met and we discussed fees. And, most of them, they felt like we're going to keep them in line, but it'll go before the board tomorrow night and we'll look at that. The thing I talked about, impact fees that we need to really start looking at. I tried to look at other communities that have them. And there basically were 4. There were 2 communities that the town planner did them. There were 2 communities, East Greenwich and Middletown, that had a consultant do theirs. One for a cost of $48,000, one for a cost of $60,000. And those impact fees in other communities are coming in around $7,900, $8,100. That's for a new development lot, per lot. Currently, what Tiverton has is, from 2007, the impact study fee that was done just for schools, and that's at $29.80. So that's what we recoup for like each new house that goes in. It's passed on to the developer, and then as they build that into the sale of the house. I don't know, I have to find out, I don't know when the developer has to pay that fee, which I think is important to learn in the process. If they have to pay that before they build it, before it's certificate of occupancy, I don't know where in the scheme that it's collected. But then I started looking at how you get impact fees, and it's really involved. First, you have to have capital improvement plans. It's a lot of legislation stuff involved. There's been legal issues. It has to be very binding, and it's a real process. So, I'm going to try work or suggest to the board that we start looking at it to figure out how to go forward with it, because I think first thing we have to do, the fire chief has a capital improvement plan that has to be like a 5-year. I was at the school department today. I'm trying to find out if they have an updated one, if they can even update their fiscal impact fee.
They have the facilities.
Well, they have all the fiscal impact, but I don't know if that counts or if that's enough to count as what you need for the capital improvement program. So I'm trying to get that information. I've talked to the police chief. I don't think he has one. We need one for the municipal side. Seems like in Tiverton, we need one that has to do with water. I mean, there's all these different sections, and then you do calculations based on number of households, and so there's math involved, and you figure out, what would be for any future person buying a house, what would be their fair amount to contribute to future acquisitions, future asset development is what it is. So, I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, the idea was to try and get something to figure out how much this would cost. If you estimate like $50,000 project to get it together, I think it's so involved initially that you probably have to get a consultant to do it. The 2 that did it is a company out of Maryland, and they seem to do a lot of them all over the country. So I think it's a very specialized study. It's not something you can just put together in a week.
What is our impact fee right now? If somebody wants-
$29.80, and that's only for schools, and the money goes specifically to what it benefits. And I guess the way it's distributed, when I asked it every year, they have it was like 56,000, I think.
We don't get it, though.
Yeah. Well, no, I asked Denise where that money went, and if it kept in a lump sum and then it went towards a project, but she said it went towards the bond every year. So I guess whatever comes in for the year goes back into the bond, and I don't know if that's how it's really set up. I mean, you can write this how you want it to go. And then so if you collected money based on what your water needs were or what your municipal building needs, which would be really important for us, then that money is designated, whatever you collect, that portion of it has to go towards, developing that, whether it's like, new police station, new fire station, new town hall, whatever.
And you're going to have that on for tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of grazing the surface of it, but it's kind of beginning the conversation of
I
it.
won't take up a lot of your time, but first of all, I really don't believe impact fees were ever developed for this type of purpose. An old town like Tiverton, where we've been paying taxes on a piece of woodlands or a farmland for 300 years. But it just seemed to me, and I don't know how, I'm just giving it some very preliminary thought when Stu Hardy mentioned it the other night. If you're coming into a town like Tiverton without going through all of the debt that this town owes, it would seem to me that just assuming that massive, you're contributing to that massive obligation that the town in previous years or previous generations has accumulated. Is that part of the calculation in trying to determine, because what you said was,
Right.
well, I'm getting a benefit by moving into town. That's true, but if you add up all of everything that I now have to contribute to in terms of the existing schools, the new schools, the roads, the streets, the landfill, that blah, 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 and suddenly I discovered, gee, I'm now contributing to this multi-million-dollar debt that really is for benefits that I'm not receiving at all.
Right. Well, I think what they're saying is the existing homeowners
Excuse
have
me,
already paid.
I'm very sorry, but I don't actually see it.
Oh, okay,
I
yeah,
don't
well,
see impact
no, I
fees
just
in the
wanted to make-
schedule.
yeah, I want to go tomorrow. I want to go. I wanted to find out what the discussion is, and
All right.
I'd like to make sure I have a
Right.
concept of what the heck is involved in an impact fee.
Right, it's an important conversation that needs to get started with all the development that's going on.
Now, tomorrow you are also going to discuss the fees that are in this schedule, which are for plan review fees. And so, at like 300, so just to give you a sense of some of the issues that we encounter with this.
We have to.
If you have a 300 home proposal, and it's $300 a unit, that's a $90,000 fee.
Do we have to motion to make sure that that is part of our public hearing? Or
I
is
think you
it-
should, yeah, actually. So let the planning board make a recommendation to you so you can take it up.
Yeah.
It could just be a flat increase all by 10%, and then at least it's on your docket.
So moved.
Second? All those in favor?
May I ask if, and I missed this, when the public hearing is going to be?
Yeah, set it down for,
We haven't discussed that.
The date.
is it a 21?
In the
or
near
7?
future.
Is it 21 days or 7?
21.
Yeah.
21.
But the impact comes up tomorrow.
Yeah, you have to have
doesn't
21 days' notice.
Yeah.
it? The impact fees come up
10
tomorrow.
fees.
But
We
I
got
want to kick it out
an idea of what's involved.
because you have planning board and everything else.
Right, either April 11th or 25th.
Okay.
So if the planning board discusses that tomorrow night, they would have to come to a decision. Let's look at calendar.
So we're basically motion to put their recommendations on the agenda.
So you said you only need 10 days?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So, now, Sue, the next, do you have 2 meetings in March?
Maybe the 22nd of March. It's going to be voted on tomorrow night. It's the second meeting.
I mean, we vote on it, make our recommendations, you, and then we come to the next council.
All right, so that would put us into April,
April 11th.
April 11th.
That should do
We need that in the form of a motion?
it. Yes, you do.
Do I have a motion? Motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Unanimous? Just one last question. On electrical, mechanical, plumbing, building, I know that there's this $1 million project cost here. Is that for each of the items? So it has to be $1 million in electrical before you can come and ask for a reduction? Same thing on mechanical, it has to have $1 million in mechanical work? Or is that the total project? That's my one question. And then, what is that, the cost for? Is it the cost of materials and labor? For a particular, if the electrical work, they get a estimate, $100,000, is it, that includes air conditioners, sound systems, whatever? Is it,
This can be clarified, but as I read it, the total cost of the project would be over $1 million, as opposed to $1 million for only the electrical permit.
That's why it's consistent across the entire.
Yes.
And it's 4% of that cost?
Yeah, so it's 4% of your declared value when you fill out your permit application. That last line becomes one of the elements in the equation. And where we're different from other communities, because this is one where we've looked pretty carefully at this, the 4% is higher than many other communities. It's not completely out of whack, it's not crazy, but it is higher. So I gave that illustration, there's so many meetings, but I believe it was Saturday where I brought up the point where if you don't do anything, if nobody waives or there's no request from the developer and they face the full brunt of the fee, if you made $80 million worth of improvements, you'd have a $3 million fee. And your inspector makes 28% of that. Those things are all locked in.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you want to tie this back to what would it actually cost to do that inspection and plan review. And when you get to this level, you know, in my conversations with our mechanical and electrical inspectors, mostly the mechanical, because he's been around the state forever, you know, by the time you get to this amount of value, you're getting a 128 anyway, or section 128, which is a, you know, a pledge by the architect or the engineer that they will oversee the work, that they will physically inspect, and all our guy does is accept the stamped inspection reports and plans of those professionals. And he does a plan review, because he's got the expertise to do it, but he doesn't necessarily reach into the details of the work. So at that point, you should be bringing the fees down, because your inspector is not doing that much work to complete that.
And he'll get the 4%.
The town should still get it, whatever percentage you just eventually set, 3.5, 3.75,
Right.
but you won't pay the inspector 28% of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, question.
Because you take a project like, I'm sorry.
Starwood.
Now, yeah, or if the casino ever came into town, I think Neil made a comment, it'd be like $875,000 for
Yes.
inspections, and 28% of that's
A lot.
a pretty good chunk of money.
I guess what I'm wondering is why we base the fees on the price of the project versus the amount of man-hours that are actually spent for the, I mean, if, okay, just if, for instance, if, all right, just some of the, you know, when you got equipment like we've talked about that is so expensive, yet, as you said, you go in and 15 minutes later, the inspection is done because it's, you know, it's an expensive piece of equipment, but it, you know.
It
Why
is.
can't we just have like an hourly fee for that inspector when he shows up on site or whatever, or when he's doing plan review, and then give an itemized bill like any other business does?
There's two assumptions. The first assumption is the higher the cost of the project, the more the inspection is going to take. That's number one. Number two, if you had the hourly fee, that would work against smaller projects and smaller contractors, because that would drive up the cost for them. So this is geared up to, number one, to make sure that no matter what the project is, it's affordable from an inspection standpoint. And secondly, there's the other assumption that the larger the cost, the more the inspection takes. That's what it's based on.
You know what happens?
But if I'm 999,000, I'm paying the full boat, but if I add 1,000 to the project, I can go and ask for relief.
Right. This entire regulatory scheme was captured by the context of the residential construction. And it's just, you know, a 4,000 square foot house is going to be that much more expensive than a 1,000 square foot house. And that's, so the assumption was made, the more value, the more time, just increase the fee.
Well, like on residential homes, I mean, we're charging by each socket.
For
I mean,
electrical.
we're even charging to look at the phone sockets, I mean, and, you know, and the speaker wiring, we're charging, you know, and that's all in the fee schedules. I mean, it's, so, Cox Cable, all that, we're charging to inspect all of that by the feet. I mean, that's kind of different. And it just, funny, I can remember Don Bolin, when he built his house, he had voted on these fees, and then he was in front of the council complaining about it. It's years ago, it was funny, but he understood that, you know, it was, I mean, you know, when he was on the council, he argued about this stuff too. We really haven't addressed a lot of it, so, I don't know, we need, like, I'm glad you're working on it, though. We need to come up with something that's fair and equitable.
Just a commercial, industrial, that they get hit with a higher fee, and 4% is a lot. And I'm not sure that we turn off businesses from building.
Well, you know what? You've already preserved your ability to talk about things on the public hearing. Maybe you would want to have a motion to reduce that 4% to 3.5%, just so you can tee up the conversation on a night when we have Neil present and others.
Okay. Make a motion to reduce it to 3.5.
3.5.
Do I have a second?
I'll second. Yeah.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Approved. All right. Is that it for all fees and schedules? Any other, council? All right, moving on to the next agenda item, discussion and possible action on planning/land use clerk vacancy. Mr. Wojtek?
Come on up, Mark.
Mark?
Madam President, so by way of overview, this document is a cooperative effort between the town administrator, the town planner, and the building zoning clerk, who is also the president of the local union that represents this position. And we arrived at this consensus. We're trying to solve more than one problem, so I kind of want to focus attention on what is the discrete problem we're trying to solve at this specific point in time. We are approaching the end of the fiscal year. We have about 3.5 months left. We need support in this department, and we have a vacancy. So the question presented is, what shall the duties of that person be from now till the end of the fiscal year, depending entirely upon what the voters approve at FTR. So what we tried to do is craft a job description, which would be the job description of this person right away. So we all understand, we would post this position for 7 working days under the AFSCME contract. It's already been accepted by the union president if it's not edited. And we'd go out to advertise if there were no internal applicants for the position. Then we'd hire as soon as possible. And that person's job description that would be here, it would be these duties as enumerated. And the benefit of doing it this way is, first of all, is we think that this list of duties takes up the most critical work.
It does.
And secondly, if there's any other approach taken either by the town council or by the budget committee or by the voters, accepting those recommendations from those bodies, this is at least a pilot. We would have 3 months of experience under our belt with this new employee to determine what this job description should look like. It's important to emphasize that nothing is set in stone forever and ever just because we put it on a piece of paper. So we're trying to answer the question, what do we need right now? What would we do tomorrow? With an open mind towards where we will end up 3.5 months from now.
I think it's a very good start. It's something that's needed. I mean, if I had a clerk on board tomorrow, I would get the comp plan submitted to the state, go back, get some minutes finished, get some decisions finished off on some previous board decisions, we get them filed, get the surety up to speed where it needs to be. So there's a lot of projects that someone could jump into right away, keep it basic, but very important for the operation of the planning board. Don't want to lose any momentum that we've had. There's some additional duties in here. It's all about improvements, making improvements to the planning processes, and we'll get into that over time, but we need somebody on board as soon as possible.
So the rest of this is, a lot of conversations about how do we want this team to work together? What is going to make them the most efficient and effective group we can have based on the budget we have, based on the number of person hours we have to throw towards the task? There are a number of workflow tracking tools that are currently not used in the town. They may not be used in many other places either, but master scheduling, so from the time somebody comes in and says, I want to build a development with, say, 14 homes in it, to the day that the last CO is issued on the last house, there's a whole flow of work that requires virtually everybody in the land use function to somehow touch it and somehow adjust to and incorporate a deadline. So that master planning schedule is one of the assets we want to create in this office, and it would be this clerk's responsibility to have that database with the key dates highlighted, the proper warning period, so, if you're in an administrative subdivision, it's 30 days from application,
Whatever,
correct?
yeah. They can go up to 65 days.
Up to 65, but the point would be, you
It's-
would never know that
Right.
specific date is coming up, because it's all posted.
The
And
calendar.
anyone from the public would have access to that and would see where we are with each one of these projects. But
Exactly.
most importantly, it would help us all establish priorities for guiding the work of the support staff, so that all of those deadlines are hit in a methodical and efficient manner. That's a critical asset that we hope this person will help create with the supervision of both of the professionals in the office. Are there other things that you want to emphasize, Mark, about?
No, that big picture thing is very important, to coordinate the permitting process and streamlining it and easing the workflow for everybody, be more efficient. I think you hit it on the head, what had to be said.
And then the other thing is tracking surety. So, go ahead, because this is what you've,
Well, tracking surety, and not just the surety, but the use of outside consultants to tighten that system up. In the past, we've let the consultant do some of the work for us and then chase some of the bills to pay the consultant, get the money from the developer. We want to make sure the money's in-house. There's not just surety, but the review fees, the consultant fees. We know where our money is, and we'll manage it properly and get the expeditiously paid off, the bills paid off properly, and move people through the process right.
so right now we have outstanding bills due to consultants of about how much?
Well, it's down to about 14,000. There's some bills that go back 3 years on a couple of projects, some site plans, and some are going to be hard to get that money from the applicants. Some more recent, 6 months back on some subdivisions, but we don't want to go back chasing applications. That needs tightening.
Well, if they haven't filed, if they've got it approved, but it hasn't been filed, we could probably go after them.
Yeah, we're not going to have anybody sign any plans. That's one thing.
Any questions from the council?
Yeah, I did have one question. With the use of a land use clerk, would you anticipate any shortening of the process? And then just so you know where I'm coming from, and it's been an issue with me ever since I've been on the town council. And I'll give you the simple example. A couple of weeks ago, I asked somebody that lives in Taunton, oh, by the way, how is that Amazon project going in the industrial park? And I know their application was filed less than a year ago. And the answer that I got was, oh, well, the building, I don't know about the equipment, but the building is half completed. And I think we can all think of other examples that we've seen in the news recently. For example, the one that really creates an aggravation for me, this FedEx building.
Oh.
Some of you who saw it
progress.
advertised in the Herald News, it said, the new FedEx building, 250,000 square feet, will be used to serve Greater Providence. It'll be built in Seacog. You have to wonder sometimes what the motivation is for those type of choices. I'd like some assurance from you that the land use clerk will at least justify the money that we're paying them. do you anticipate some shortening in this process that we seem to go through here in Rhode Island or here in Tiverton?
I mean, the goal is efficiency and streamlining and making the process faster. I think communication's going to get enhanced and be more respectful of timeframes and altogether with the bigger picture. I think that's one of the values of a land use clerk. See the building, the zoning, the planning, and how all intermeshes together. As we do a development plan review, say for Mr. Long's project at the park, I mean, that helps out the building inspector and the inspectors down the road, and the timing and how we approach that and be efficient with that needs to be coordinated by somebody who has the bigger picture and pushes the paper for us.
Well, I think what your answer is, yes, you would anticipate that with more help, you'd have a more efficient operation.
Yes.
And maybe we could move things along a little faster,
Have to.
I hope.
That's the goal.
I just wanted to make sure that I had that understanding.
Mayor?
I have just, do you want to go, just really quick, billing. Maybe we can work this out with, like, the accounting department. So they're more apt with ledgers. So maybe from bills from any project could have a accounts receivable within the accounting department where they can track it probably more efficiently. Suggestion on that.
Well, that's a good suggestion, between treasurers, accounting, whatever. We have to work on that.
Joe?
Well, just to answer Jay, that to think that having a secretary is going to move projects along. What we saw in Mass is you saw areas, like in their industrial parks, where the zoning and the planning were pre-approved. So they were able to go there and not go before planning and zoning and waste 2 years. They put a permit and they built the building, so having a secretary is not going to change the
Yeah,
problems.
but I see that in all of the towns. For example, I don't have any idea at all what type of process they have in place in Seacon, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
But the FedEx building is expected to be completed by the end of this year. We couldn't possibly compete with something like that. And to tell me that a 1 million square foot complex like the Amazon building is now half completed, and they haven't even been, the contract was signed less than a year ago.
I think it's apples and oranges, Jay,
It
and we
is,
have
it
to,
is,
we
but
have our own
I'd
processes
like to-
in Rhode Island.
I'd like to see us,
Yeah,
True.
Unfortunately, it's
whether we
broke.
favor something or we're against something, at least I'd like to see that the process is moving along. And I can't help but believe that one of the considerations that any developer will keep in mind is, gee, how long will it take me to go from A to opening, Z to opening up the project?
You just saw that with a
And
business
I'm
in the
not
North
trying- I'm
End.
not trying to create a problem or anything, but how would you, I understand, I think I understand, why FedEx would say in the Herald News, we're opening up this project to serve the greater Providence area. And then you read on, they're building it in Seacon. I mean, that makes absolutely no sense to me as a layperson. Or for somebody to tell me that a 1 million square foot building like the Amazon can be built in less than a year. Whatever the explanation is, I really don't care. I'd simply like to be more competitive so that the developers can look at Massachusetts at the same time they're looking at Rhode Island.
That's tools, economic development tools, too.
Yeah, I think that,
Any other questions from the council?
I have a couple. First one is, this is gonna go out in the advertisement, correct? It gets approved tonight? And
we'll follow the contract, so we'll post it internally. There's a provision in the ASME contract for a new position. We agreed to call it that because there's so much more responsibility here than there was under the past job description. 7 working days. If there are no applicants, during those 7 working days, we'll advertise to the general public.
now, this is already in our budget for this year, correct? This is replacing Kate, kind of? No.
It's actually going to be less. So in Ms. Michaud's salary line, she was a full employee, had been here for 15 years, however. So this person would be hired at $3 less per hour than Ms. Michaud was making on her base salary.
And that's it's also going to be in next year's, it's in next year's budget.
Absolutely. I mean, this position has always existed. You've always paid this salary.
4-month job,
Yeah.
and then they're gone.
Yeah, so just so I can be clear, we're calling it a new job because the job description is different. But this position exists today in the budget, has existed for many years,
And
and
that's
will
what I
be
wanted to
continued.
get out to
Yeah.
the public, because this is there already.
Yes,
It's just a job title change.
title change,
That's all it is. Get that out there.
yeah.
The only thing I've seen here is under hours. It has potential to earn overtime or compensation time on a regular monthly basis. In accordance with federal law. Is that for attending the meetings?
Correct. So if an individual, the AFSCME contract's different than our others. A full work week is 32.5 hours. FLSA would be 40, but our contract is more generous than FLSA, so we pay overtime for hours worked over 32 and a half. And it may be comp time or it may be compensated overtime. Now, the wrinkle in the AFSCME contract is if any time is taken, any benefit time, your attendance at the meeting taking minutes doesn't kick into overtime until you pass 32.5. So if I am a 32 and a half an hour a week employee and I take 6 hours of sick time, during that pay period, I'm at technically 26 and a half. And if I go to the planning board meeting and work for 3.5 hours, I haven't gone over 32 and a half, it's all straight time.
Okay. That's all I have right now.
Okay, I just have a question on, under duties, number 2. So this is a position where they're posting meeting agendas for the zoning board and the planning board, and taking in, publishing meeting minutes to board members for review and approval. I thought the zoning was done by the stenographer.
Correct.
Yeah, that's true.
So are you changing the stenographer's job to exclude meeting minutes? Or should this basically be focused on the planning board meeting minutes and not the zoning board?
Yeah, just add the word planning in front of board.
Yeah, it's good right there, yeah. To planning board members.
On some rare occasions, the zoning board, the zoning clerk has taken minutes for the zoning board because they didn't have hearings. It was for their internal business and other things. It's so uncommon that it doesn't need to be here.
Okay, and number 9, I'm actually agreeing with Peter. Responsibility for accounts payable, accounts receivable, and reimbursements made to outside consultants. I'm not sure that I would expect a clerk to have that responsibility, to be responsible for that amount of accounting. Certainly tracking it maybe, but not
Good.
being responsible for it.
No, what was intended here wasn't general ledger. It was managing the budget. So right now, every department is a little bit different. In our land use divisions currently, the clerks do manage their budget. So if they buy supplies, they make sure they have enough in their budget line item and they only spend what they have, et cetera, et cetera. It's intended that this person would provide that function.
Yeah, basic function. But you're right, tracking surety, tracking accounts payable, working with accounting, working with a treasurer. I think is the intent.
Yeah, well, we all work our departments through the accounts payable clerk and check
Yeah,
on that
downstairs.
basis.
That's where things got lost.
Just for clarity, the sureties don't get released, they get released by you, correct?
The planning board,
No.
planning board votes to release it. Recommendations, the consulting engineer, the AO.
Okay, so the planning board recommends it, not the AO.
I recommend, the AO recommends, the consulting engineer recommends to the planning board. The planning board takes the vote to release the surety.
Or reduce it.
So you can't do it,
Or reduce it, you're correct, or reduce it, no.
because that was done.
A lot of times.
Now, so I just want to go back to how we ended up with some bills, so that everybody understands. there are services provided in connection with enforcement of various proposals that are the responsibility of the contractor developer to pay. But sometimes the amount they have in escrow isn't sufficient to pay the bill that has come through. So if Deirdre does an inspection and she has a bill, this just happened, where, she had a budget item of $1,000. But after she added up all her time and other expenses, it was $1,800. Well, then somebody's gonna take that and go back to the contractor developer, collect those funds to cover the professional expenses. And so what we've gotten a little bit behind on, not a lot, but a little bit behind on, is about $14,000 worth of consulting and inspection work that hasn't been reimbursed by the contractor developer yet.
Good, yeah, tighten that up.
All right, and can you explain item number 10, duty number 10?
That may have, my intent on that one, I drafted it was, say, for instance, community development block grant, applications working with community housing group, church group. There's been a bunch of reports we have to work with them on to comply low and moderate income, statistics and filing. If there's any project David's Bacon compliance, things like that. Help with compliance on grants.
Because this is very broad. I read it in,
Because it depends what grant you get. Some may be very little reporting, and others, what it was is Kate was doing reporting for the community block grant with the church community housing group. That's why I put it in there. Some reports do come in, and they're still working for us on some planning grant monies. So we still have to continue that function.
Yep, they were just here, what they do, they spent 2 days here.
Yeah, the auditors came in here from the federal government, and they looked at our records, so we have to maintain some records in-house. So it's not a big function, but it's an important function.
And the newest wrinkle is they want to make sure we use our admin money. So all of the administrative activities associated with the CDBG-funded project must have, what is it now? It's 10%.
Yeah, minimum 10.
Associated with it for the administration. They actually want us to be reimbursed. So somebody's.
I would think that would be a job for the planner. I wouldn't give this to the clerk. That's a pretty big compliance role. And I would not want a clerk that has no knowledge doing this report.
Which one is that, dude?
Number 10, I think that should be the planner's responsibility. It's the management, piece, the compliance.
I hear your point, but some of these other grant reports are very simple.
It was this was a really simple function when I put it in there. It's not very complicated. It's pushing some paper around.
But at the same time, it's a compliance, and I would think that a manager would have that responsibility.
certainly they have the ultimate responsibility.
I'm accountable.
Well, I think that the work, you'd be checking on their work anyway.
Absolutely, I'm supervising, I'm accountable for the office, and I'm responsible for that, but
A grant shouldn't be submitted without you checking it.
I'm gonna, right, I have to review it.
It's only my
Well, this is not saying that
She's
the person's going to write a grant.
preparing
No, but I'm just saying,
reports.
she might be helping with the grant process.
But in a management position, preparing reports, basically, it's not a clerk's position. I work in the mortgage industry. My manager does the reports. They don't hand it out to a clerk. It's the management's position. And again, I don't care how small the report is, management should be doing the reports.
For federal and state grants.
How about this, then? Assists in preparation of reports.
There you go. Just like number 11, assist with the editing.
Yep.
Yeah, I was in the former planning clerk job description, just carried it over.
You want me to have those edits? Thank you. Anything else from the council?
Can you just explain what, maybe I'm just not understanding, under the base wage, that paragraph says base wage, can you explain how this is gonna work?
Under hours? Oh, no,
Base wage,
All right, I'll do that for you. So, in the appendix to the AFSCME contract, there are job categories, supervising clerk being two of them. This position is a clerk for purposes of establishing the base wage. So the starting hourly wage for the position is $18.70 for a newly hired employee. So for the employee who's been here for longer than 3 years, this goes up $1 a year. So it was $21.70 for Ms. Michaud, but under the AFSCME contract, a new employee filling that position is $3 less per hour, so that's $18.70. Now, we're in the middle of negotiating a contract, so some of this is going to be read by potential applicants to the position. So I'm explaining to them how they'll be compensated and what the outlook would be, so that's where the rest of this paragraph comes in. A successor contract is being negotiated if the current base wage practices are continued. For the first 3 complete years of employment, the clerk's base wage will increase $1 per hour each year on the employee's anniversary date, in addition to any annual hourly rate increase negotiated between the town and the union. So that dollar is locked in. If we do a 2% raise or a 3% raise each year for AFSCME, that would also be added to the wage. That's what that's saying. The dollar doesn't go away. The dollar keeps getting added each
is that
year.
in anybody, is this in anybody else's contract working here?
Yeah, so presently, the maintenance guys have both been here less than 3 years.
Yeah.
So they started off at the base wage in that year that they were hired, minus $3, and each year they go up $1.
So if we hired somebody in-house who had already been working for the town for 5 years, would they start off already at the higher, since they've already got the 3 years in, working in a different job?
Are you trying to ask me a trick question? It depends how long they've been working here. So if they've been working here for more than 3 years, they would be at the full wage for that job.
So they
category.
wouldn't start at the 1870,
They wouldn't.
they'd be up already to the 2170.
Yeah, and that's why I parsed the words carefully. I said, for a newly hired employee. Yeah, when I post this internally,
But we gotta post it internally, and then we gotta find somebody who's qualified, and more than likely, that's gonna be somebody who's actually been around town hall for multiple years.
you would hope, but we do have employees here who've been, clerical staff who've been here less than 3 years. I
Yeah.
don't know if they'd be interested in this position.
I'm just, well, I don't know, I can't even justify the position right now, so but I'm just wondering what we're getting into contractually. I mean, I didn't remember seeing this in other contracts. You're saying it's new to the newly hired?
It's not new, but this is the only contract where this exists. Of your 4 collective bargaining units, this is the only one that does this. Well, in a way, in the other departments, you call it something different. Like a firefighter is hired at a probationary wage and stays at the probationary wage for 1 year.
Yeah.
Then they go up to 3rd class. Well, that's kind of what's going on here. They're just calling it something different.
But you're getting that on top of your annual percentage that you would get with the contract.
Correct.
So it's kind of a double. It's almost like the step increase for the teachers. You get the step and the annual increase.
Any more questions, Joe?
Yeah.
Just one more, sorry. Under duties, number 6. Explain to me what assuring compliance with all court orders means.
Well, the appeals, like different appeals that someone takes against the town with, say, comprehensive permit or major land developments, I mean, our secretaries, our clerical people put together tremendous amount of paperwork and copies in compliance with anything that's looked for, depositions, public records requests.
So, so this is, the APA is the item number 5 refers to the APA, access to public records request. So what specifically is the difference between that and this?
May I?
Go, you go.
If there's a zoning appeal that's taken, one of the things that the town is required to do is to send the official record up to the court, and until that happens, the case can't move forward. So I'm assuming that this is the person that would put that together
Yeah.
and deliver it. Other times what happens is, in these cases, is either the court or the other party will ask for certain documents from the town that would be submitted into court, either certified copies or other documents from the town. So I'm assuming that this would be the employee that would get those documents and then deliver them either to myself or directly to the court.
It just seems like assuring compliance is not something that, whereas the clerk position, you would say, okay, it gathers the information, puts a package together.
I agree.
And gives it to someone to act upon. So I'm not sure that's assuring compliance.
It's more of a ministerial duty. Ultimately, I think with court orders, you're going to be looking to the solicitor to make sure that that happens. But there are times when I will call over here and say, look, I need these documents so that I can submit them in court. So I think that's the intent of that one. Perhaps can be worded a little
Well, yeah, let's make it
differently.
clearer. So strike the word assuring
And compliance.
and put in the word supports? Supports
Yeah.
compliance?
Right, because the clerk would gather the information, but I'm certain that it would go to the lawyer to say all the,
Correct.
Yeah, I'll go to
provided the
Tony.
information as requested. Okay. Anything else? And what would you put out for an advertisement, this entire document?
No. No, so this could be our trial run at using the same app, if you will, that police and fire have used in the most recent round of recruiting. So they have firefighter app, and we have access to an app called employerapp.com. It's all the same things. It's database management. You fill out your form, your application form, upload, if you need to, your credentials, and it all goes to an account with read-only authority that the personnel board can then project onto a screen and work their way through just by clicking on the various fields and determining. So what would be advertised is only a very short summary of this. The town of Tiverton seeks, you've seen plenty of those ads before. The town of Tiverton seeks a land use clerk. Much of what's here in the overview, and perhaps the first sentence or so of ours, along with all of our equal opportunity language, would appear in an advertisement. But people would be directed either to the town of Tiverton website or employmentapp.com for all. This would be posted there.
Okay. And did you review this job description with the personnel board?
We did, I want to say, but where were we in the process when we did that?
I don't know.
We've made a habit of sending virtually every job description now to the personnel board for comments. I think in this case, it was important to touch base with the union. Yeah, I'm not going to break from my habit. I've been sending everything to them, so I'll send it to them. I think, but I just feel like I got feedback on the initial draft of this thing. I'm looking at you, but you weren't.
I don't
on either.
recall. So honest, I don't know.
I can certainly do that before we post.
I think they should have it before they start interviewing.
Yeah, before we post, it's much better that way. Because then we can have the conversation with the union president at the same time.
I think they should have a copy before they start interviews.
Always. No, always. So what we've done, and you're aware of this, we don't advertise anything until we've sent it to the personnel board first, so that they at least have it. There's no compromise around that. On the job descriptions, I go back and forth, but how much I involve the screening board with the creation of the job description. Most of the comments I've gotten to date have been extremely helpful, and I'm glad I asked for them, so I'll run this by them again. But this is pretty tight because it's around a lot of language that's existed in other places.
Is there a fee to get on that website?
Yeah, your application fee is $16. So it's free to the town, but the applicant pays $16 for the service.
So in a way, that's good, because you're going to get people who are really interested in that position.
The unmitigated disaster has been Monster, because we put things out on Projo, and it gets picked up by Monster, and we get a lot of real junk, just people throwing their name out there, and we spend a lot of time sorting through stuff that's not serious. No offense to Monster, but it just doesn't work for us.
I think it's a great idea. Okay. We've got to remember, this is a replacement position. We're not creating a new position.
Right.
It's a replacement position.
Any more questions from the council? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the job description for land use clerk with the changing of number 2 under duties after taking and publishing meeting minutes planning to the planning board members. One change there, planning. Down in number 6, striking the word assuring, putting in the word supports compliance with all court orders.
Right.
And in number 10, adding the word assist in preparing reports for state and federal. I think those are the only things that
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Okay.
Motion failed.
Motion failed.
2 to 3.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Motion has been made and seconded and approved.
Can't do it.
Meeting is adjourned.